Yeah, I want to put out some other things on a silver update today because actually I was going to put this out in an unrelated video, but I'm going to include it in here because it is related to what's going to happen in the markets eventually. There was a vote in Ukraine, on one section of Ukraine, that actually had another vote to break away and be its own independent country. And I'm going to say it's a sham vote basically, but this does relate to the metals because it's another more tricky games going on. I'm actually going to point to a link to another video that's on YouTube that is not one of my videos, but basically it's a conversation between two Russian officials saying like, oh, well, what do you want to make the referendum be? What do you want the outcome to be? Make it 99%. And the other one goes, oh, well, how about 89%, 89%. And lo and behold, the referendum came out to be 89% to break away and be an independent state. So, I know Vladimir Putin is saying that he wanted to postpone the referendum, but I think that's all a scam. He's a shrewd player, but I just want to put out that there are certain elements in the United States or in the West that are not going to. There's going to be some type of confrontation below the surface or something that's actually coming up that's going to bring the price of the metals up. I know a lot of people are starting to predict again because it seems like the metals are down in the doldrums, and it's surprising that the equities are still hitting record heights. Now, if they keep going up, the bull market for the equities, the general equities, keeps going up until July, that will be the second longest bull run. The second longest bull run we've had in history was back in the 80s, and it ended in October of 87 with a crash, and that's when they actually instituted the plunge protection team. Well, quote unquote, basically it's not really called that, but it's a nickname to protect the markets. Now, the biggest, longest bull run we've had was back in the 20s. Of course, that ended in Black Monday and the crash in 1929. But, what I'm looking at is that the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to fall. It's not being negative or anything like that, but there's nothing actually behind the actual sustained growth. Even in the 20s, there was something behind the sustained growth. There was more productivity. A lot of things were coming online that never were in the history of mankind, with communication, the radio, the transportation, with in the manufacturing. All that was brand new. Actually, if you compare the 1930s to 50 years prior to, like, say 1885, it was a world of difference. Now, if you compare like 1964 to today, it's not as drastic as the 50-year period from, say, 1885 to 1935 or 1880 to 1930. It's far more drastic. And, part of that, that was part of the logic behind the unprecedented run-up in the equities market, was that there was underlying prosperity and new inventions, that there could never be a economic downturn. Now, today, we're getting close to already the second largest bull run, but there's already been one sector of the market that's already crashed, and that has been in the tech sector. The tech sector has already, crashed pretty damn hard, and it's not going to recover right away. It's not going to recover right away, and that may be a predecessor for what's going to happen in the equities. Actually, pretty much all mainstream analysts out there are saying that this is not the conspiracy people that are silver bugs or gold bugs. I'm talking about mainstream analysts. Pretty much all of them are stating that when the next crash comes in, and I'm not talking about Mark Farber or anything, I'm talking about others, there's many others, that the next crash that's coming up in the equities market is going to be between 30 and 40%. And that's what they're saying. Now, I know the silver bugs and things might be saying 60% to 90%. I don't think it's going to be that much of a crash, but probably the more dangerous part of the market today is the equities versus the metals, even though there's predictions out there for the metals are going to even continue to go down more. But I have some doubts, and there's another reason for that besides the geopolitical events. I've been reading that the physical price of silver, I think it was in Bahrain or one of the Middle Eastern countries, is already about $80 an ounce of physical price in certain countries because there's an actual physical shortage of something. You know, it's the price that's dictated on the spot market is pretty much goes throughout the world, but not in every sector of the world. And you know, that's actually the same thing even in crude oil. In crude oil too. If there's an actual squeeze to get something, you have to pay. You know, there'll be premiums on the spot price, and it's just a physical negotiation. It doesn't instantaneously affect every single aspect of the market out there, although it does affect most aspects of the market. The spot price that, you know, is figured out by traders, but or traders or manipulators, if you want to put it that way. But what I'm seeing coming up, though, is there's a hell of a lot more geopolitical tensions coming up on the horizon again. And again, I want to state, I'm going to put a link to a video. I didn't make it. It's actually in Russian or whatever it is, and you have to see the translation on it. Basically, they stated beforehand what the results for the breakaway election was for the referendum was going to be. They said 89% in favor. So pretty much that's a given that that thing was rigged to the max. But it does state that the ambitions of Vladimir Putin are strong. And, you know, unfortunately, he's got a lot of support in the West. And I don't know what the hell to do about that, because I think he probably has more support in Europe, maybe, than he has in the United States. I don't know. I don't know. It seems to be that way. But it's very difficult to actually judge where he has the most support. But you have to say this, you know, if you're against the New World Order, it's not enough to be against the Western elitist banksters and all that stuff. It is, you really have to be against what's going on in Russia too. You have to be against both sides, both oligarch setups and everything else. It's not a matter of just being against the West. You got to be, if you're really for true individual freedom, you got to be for basically you're you know, it be true across the board, because you're being offered a false choice with this deal with Vladimir Putin. It's amazing how his propaganda has taken root with people, and I'm looking at it like I don't see how people could buy into this. I mean, I see right through it in a second flat, but you know, some people are just buying into it all the time. You know, as far as like if I was talking politically about Ukraine, I would just say Ukraine ought to be totally independent, one country. There's no reason to divide it up into sections. That game where they're dividing it up into sections will make it easier for Russia to influence each section. You know, that's the whole game that's going on there. So, but it looks like there's actually, I want to point something else about Ukraine. It looks like they're building dams or something like that that is restricting the water to the Crimea. And they got their excuses for why they're doing it or whatever it is. But it's also bringing up to a very critical situation where if the Crimea doesn't get the water, because the Russians aren't going to be able to build pipelines that fast, they're going to have like a total agricultural crop failure and a local depression in that area. So there's a lot of games going on here. So also I want to point out, even geopolitically, a lot of people don't realize this. U.S. armed forces are back in the Philippines, in Subic Bay, and there's now there's going to be joint military maneuvers with the U.S. and the Philippine forces to protect the area against you know, encroachment by China on the Spratly Islands or whatever that's going on over there. So what I'm saying is, even though this is a whole bunch of bad news, pretty much if you look back in history, every single time there's a lot of geopolitical tensions, the commodities go up. It's not just gold and silver, it's oil, it's copper, it's the whole everything. It's everything. Actually, before World War I, this is where Smedley Butler was right about war is a racket. There's a lot of people that call for war because they are going to benefit by financially, big time. But if you look at Anaconda Copper, I think it was, their stock that went up so much percent in World War I. If we have another major conflict in the world, or we have several conflicts going on at once, it's a given that the commodities and the precious metals are going to go way up. Now, palladium has still been doing very well because of the tensions with Russia. Now, I saw one day it went down like crazy because what happened was, it was palladium especially and platinum, because Vladimir Putin said that he was pulling troops away from the eastern Ukraine area. Now, he may or may not have been, but when he said that, immediately palladium took a huge hit and pulled back. But it was my contention that that's not going to last that long. Actually, right now, it looks like, even though palladium is up to levels it hasn't been up to in years, it may be the better bet. But I would not advise people to buy palladium over silver right now, because I think the price of silver is too far depressed, and you can trade it out in smaller increments. With palladium, you got like an ounce is $800 something. With silver, you can buy yourself, 40 ounces of that. That's the difference. Plus, the common man understands what silver is. Common man, for the most part, does not understand what palladium is. So if you come to a crisis economic situation, you're much better off with silver. Much better off with silver right now. If there was ever a crazy pullback in palladium due to everything smoothing out with Russia, yeah, I would advise possibly to do that, but I don't think that's going to happen. Even though I think palladium, even at this price, may do better financially and go up more than silver, I would still recommend buying silver versus palladium, because silver prices are drastically suppressed. I know there's people out there predicting it's going to go down 30-40% to 15 or more. I have serious doubts about that, because it's been suppressed for a long period of time, and the mining sector is losing money in a lot of areas. They're not expanding, and the demand is still there. The demand is still there. So I don't think what I think is going to happen unexpectedly is the equities markets is going to get knocked down. And we've already seen the tech sector of the equities markets get knocked down very unexpectedly. It actually has happened. But the general equities markets have not got knocked down yet. But I'm going to state again that it's been the consensus of the major media analysts, and you hear this all the time from the silver and gold bugs and all this type of stuff, that the equities are going to go down, stay in the commodities, stay in the precious metals. But it's been a consensus for maybe almost a year now. I'd say more than 6 months anyway, that in the major media, they're even talking about the equities are too pricey. Even Goldman Sachs is saying the equities are too pricey. The PE ratios aren't good. It doesn't look, the long-term outlook for equities and corporate bonds and government bonds doesn't look good. They're all saying that. So, it's not, I'm not putting out a niche type thing here. What I'm saying is that you're probably still better off in precious metals, even though they don't seem like they're doing much. They're going up a little bit, they're going down a little bit, and people I think are getting discouraged with this stuff, and it's been a long correction period. But I just have to also state again that if you look back, every single time silver went up, it was a short period of time. It doesn't, if it goes from here to this height, it doesn't go in a straight line like that. It goes like this, and it rockets at the end. Then it has a hard correction. And, it's anybody's guess how high is high. I personally think the next major height, what I'm talking about, when it really takes off again, will be 72 to 75 by Fibonacci points. That's where I would think it would be. But that, it may actually come about this year if things heat up fast enough. I have other things I was looking at and it makes a lot of sense that they're going to, if there's a major conflict goes on in Ukraine, and it looks like it's heating up that way, that's when the United States and Israel is going to hit Syria. And if that happens, I could see oil and gold go way to hell up very, very quickly. It would go up very, very quickly. And you're going to see silver go up too. And what I'm looking at, though, is it could happen where we see all these giant price leaps in 8 months' time, which is not much time at all. And a lot of it could happen this year. I said this in almost every video. I think there's a 3-year pattern. We had 2005 was a height on silver and gold and oil. Not exactly all the same exact time, but they kind of all run together more or less. They don't run exactly together in unison, but they seem to be within, the ballpark of each other. 2005 was a very good year for the commodities. Big crash thereafter. Then 2008, then there was a big reset again. And then 2011, then another big reset. So it seems to be spaced out in 3-year waves. And looking at the geopolitical events, one thing could set everything in motion where it starts moving up and they can't stop it, they can't stop it, they can't stop it. It starts taking a life of its own, gets too far ahead of itself. Like, in other words, if silver went over $50 an ounce, it would be too far ahead of itself. And it may go even quite a bit past the 50, when it starts taking off. And then it'll crash hard and go well below the 50. So, what I have to say is, like, it's commodities have always been noted for not somebody who likes doesn't like drama, because basically with commodities there's a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of potential to make a lot of money. There's a lot of potential to lose a lot of money if you get scared and you get shaken out. That's why you don't put all your money in one area and you don't put all your money into silver. But if you're patient enough to wait for the game, you're going to make a lot of money on the precious metals, especially at these prices. So it looks like, again, I'm stating is like the geopolitical events are heating up again. The West is not going to accept this referendum. And again, I want to point to a link where they stated what the results of the referendum would be for the breakaway nation that was going to be within Ukraine. They already stated what the results would be before they actually occurred. They said they wanted 89% to break away, and they got 89%, which, 101, that's a rigged election. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and geopolitical events are basically the main thing that's going to heat up the metals. So just want to put it that way. Just keep that in mind. And when they take off, they're going to take off a lot faster than unexpected. It's always been this way. Silver, if you say the height was here and this was the low, and you draw a line between that, it never follows that line. It never does. You look back all the way for the last 20 years, it never follows that line, a straight line between the low point and the high point. It's always like a lot of gains at the end, gets too far ahead of itself, a big crash. The big problem is to be guessing when that big crash is. But right now, I could state that from the suppression of silver prices over the last few years, I can't see any big crash coming up in the metals. I think the big crash is going to be coming up with the equities. And again, I want to state that that has been the consensus of the major media analysts besides the gold bug people. The gold bug people have been saying there's going to be a crash in the equities for the last 5 years. But it's only been within about the last 6 months where the major media is starting to talk about they're way too pricey. So if the equities come down, you might see that inverse relationship again, where gold is doing well and the equities are doing bad. So be patient.